Welcome back guys. After discussing about the Brown-Séquard syndrome, now in this video let's discuss about the Syringomyelia. First of all, what exactly is the Syringomyelia? See, the name itself is there, Syringomyelia. Syrinx is present in the spinal cord. Here, mylia stands to spinal cord. And what exactly is the syrinx? Syrinx means a cavity, cystic dilatation is happening. Okay, where? In the spinal cord. You can clearly see in this image on my top. You can clearly see here in this MRI, this cystic dilatation or the cystic cavity is present inside the spinal cord. We all know spinal cord is a place where the sensations are ascending up, and spinal cord is a place where the motor neurons or the descending tracts are coming down from the cortex to the spinal cord. So whenever there is this cystic dilatation or the cystic degeneration, so definitely there will be loss of certain sensations, right? And there can be possibility that the patient can even go into the paralysis. Why? Because both the sensory neurons and the motor neurons will be affected. Okay. Now, first of all, let's see the important points about the Syringomyelia. In Syringomyelia, the patient is going to experience dissociative sensory loss. Sir, what is this? It's not a complete sensory loss, but dissociative, which means certain senses are lost and certain senses are preserved. Okay, now see here, dissociative sensory loss means there is loss of touch, pain, temperature, pressure. There is loss of primitive sensations, touch, pain, temperature are lost. But the dorsal column sensations, what are the dorsal column sensations? The advanced sensations which are going through the fasciculus gracilis and fasciculus cuneatus, highly myelinated tracts, we have discussed, right? The advanced sensations, fine touch, 2-point discrimination, stereognosis, conscious proprioception. Okay, all these are the advanced sensations. There is no problem to the advanced sensation. The person is not going to lose the advanced sensations, but there is a loss of primitive sensations because of this cavity in the spinal cord. We will see why it happens. Guys, see here, this is the cross section of the spinal cord in which I am showing you the cavity. See, here is the syrinx. Okay, here is the syrinx, and the cross section of the spinal cord which I am showing you is at the level of the cervical. Okay, cervical spine. This is the cervical spinal cord, and in the spinal cord, please appreciate, this is not the central canal, this is the cystic cavity, okay, which is present over here. Now first let's discuss about the dorsal column sensations. See, this is the first order neuron, the blue color one is the first order neuron, it is carrying the advanced sensations. Now this first order neuron, it is entering into the spinal cord and it is going to the dorsal column. It is directly going into the dorsal column. The first order neurons are not getting terminated. The first order neurons are not crossing to the contralateral side. Okay. So there is no problem with the dorsal column sensations. Why? Because sensations are entering into the spinal cord. They are jumping directly into the dorsal column and they are ascending up. So no loss of dorsal column sensations. But if you look at the primitive sensation, please look at this red color neuron or this red color fiber. This neuron is carrying the touch, pain, temperature, for example, okay, primitive sensations. Now this order neuron, it's coming into the spinal cord. Now what happens? We all have studied the first order neuron is going to terminate. Okay, the first order neuron terminates in the dorsal column. So not column, dorsal horns. Okay, the first order neurons are going to terminate in the dorsal horns. Now from there, the second order neurons will start. Okay, the second order neuron, this is the cell body of second order neuron. See, this second order neuron, it is going to cross to the contralateral side and ascend up as anterolateral tracts, anterior spinothalamic tract, lateral spinothalamic tract, we have discussed. So what I am trying to put into your mind is, this second order neuron, it will cross to the contralateral side. While it is crossing to the contralateral side, what happens? See here, there is cystic degeneration. Degeneration has happened. So automatically this neuronal fiber which is carrying the primitive sensations will also be affected. Okay, so now when the neuron is crossing to the opposite side, see here it's got damage. So the person is going to lose touch, pain, temperature, pressure. Primitive sensations are lost. Okay, primitive sensations are lost. Okay, so there is a loss of touch, pain, temperature, but the dorsal column sensations are spared. Okay, dorsal column sensations are spared on both the sides of the body. Both the sides of the body. See, the dorsal column sensations are not affected, but on both the sides of the body, here there is a cavity. So if here there is a cavity means the fiber which is crossing from this side will also be affected. So on both the sides, the patient is going to lose touch, pain, temperature, pressure sensations below the level of lesion. Okay, so the important points are, where is the most common location of this syrinx? The most common location of the syrinx is cervical vertebra. Okay, so in the cervical vertebra, on the cervical part of the spinal cord, in the cervical part of the spinal cord, you can have this cystic degeneration or the cystic dilatation of the cavity. Now it is associated with what? Now the syringomyelia is one condition which is associated with Arnold-Chiari malformation type 1. What is happening in Arnold-Chiari malformation type 1? In Arnold-Chiari malformation type 1, the cerebellar peduncles, not cerebral, cerebellar. Okay, so the cerebellar peduncles, they will herniate down onto the spinal cord from the foramen magnum. We all know from the foramen magnum, spinal cord will descend down. Now, in this Arnold-Chiari malformation, what exactly happens is the cerebellar tonsils, they will herniate down through the foramen magnum onto the spinal cord. This is called as Arnold-Chiari malformation. Usually, this syringomyelia is the one condition which is associated, it will come in association with Arnold-Chiari malformation type 1. For example, if I am the patient who is having Arnold-Chiari malformation type 1, now I will also develop the syringomyelia. Okay, so that's what associated with Arnold-Chiari malformation type 1. Now, if a patient is going to have this syringomyelia, he is going to lose the sensations. See, this is C3, C4, C5. Okay, this is the part of the cervical spine. See, if here, okay, this is the most common location. The cervical vertebra C3, C4, C5 are the most common site for the formation of this syrinx. Whenever you have syrinx in this area, see, usually the spinal nerve number 3, 4, 5, they will take the information. Okay, they are going to innervate these dermatomes. These are the dermatomes through which they are taking the information, touch, pain, temperature, pressure. Okay, all this information is going through this spinal nerve. C3 is taking the area. Okay, C3 is covering this area. C4 is covering this area, and C5 spinal nerve. C5 spinal nerve is going to cover all this area, which means C5 spinal nerve is going to take touch, pain, temperature, pressure, primitive sensations from this part of the body. For example, in this region, what is happening? Syrinx is forming. So those spinal nerves will be affected. So the patient is going to lose primitive sensations from this part of the body. So it's like just like a cape, right? Just like a cape. Okay, cape-like distribution. So we'll see cape-like distribution in syringomyelia, cape-like loss of sensations. Okay. Now after discussing about the syringomyelia, now let's discuss about the somatosensory cortex as well as the motor cortex. Guys, please look at here. Right now, whatever I am pointing here, this is called as a central sulcus. Sulcus means a depression. Okay, now the point where I am pointing, okay, this area, the area where I am pointing is called as a central sulcus. Okay, central sulcus. Now, back to the central sulcus, you are having a gyrus, elevation. Elevation is called as a gyrus, and whatever I am showing you here in pink color is the gyrus. Okay, here. So this is post-central gyrus. Okay, this is a central sulcus. Back to the central sulcus, you are having a gyri which is called as a post, means back. Post-central gyri. Okay, now this post-central gyri, okay, is called as a somatosensory cortex or the primary sensory cortex. Primary sensory cortex. Why we are calling it as a primary sensory cortex? Why? Because this part of the cortex is now receiving all the sensations and processing the sensations. All the sensory processing is happening in this area. Okay, all the sensory processing is happening in this area. Okay, now for example, touch, pain, temperature, we can conscious proprioception, vibration, stereognosis, advanced as well as the primitive sensations, all the sensations you are feeling in this part of the cortex. So it is called as a primary sensory cortex. Now located in post-central gyrus. What is the Brodmann's area number? Brodmann's area number 312. Now let's talk about the motor cortex. Now motor cortex is the precentral gyrus. This is the precentral gyrus. We'll discuss in detail about the motor cortex. Motor cortex was further divided into 3 types. With that we will discuss later. But anyway, so this precentral gyrus, it will act as a motor cortex, which means from this part of the cortex, you will get the commands to the central, to the skeletal muscles. For example, from here, the upper motor neurons will arise. From this part of the cortex, upper motor neurons will arise. They will come down onto the spinal cord as corticospinal tracts. Now, these upper motor neurons will control the lower motor neurons in the spinal cord. So, they will cause the contraction of the muscles. Okay, which is the motor activity. So what I am trying to put into your mind is, this motor cortex is the primary motor cortex, which is located in the precentral gyrus. The area number, the Brodmann's area number is 4 and 6, from where the motor neurons are going to originate. Okay, from the layer 5 of neocortex that we will discuss later. From the layer 5 of neocortex, Bed's cells, they will give the upper motor neurons. Okay, now here itself, I just want you to know one point. So this area is the somatosensory cortex, the pink color area, this like light reddish color area, this is the somatosensory cortex. Okay, and the blue color area which I am showing you, which is in the precentral gyrus, is the motor cortex, no doubt. But see, if someone comes to you and asks you like majority of the upper motor neurons originate from which area, usually students will think, so the upper motor neurons are coming from the motor cortex. Upper motor neuron should have to come from the motor cortex. Yes, true, but majority of the motor neurons, okay, 40% of the upper motor neurons will actually come from the somatosensory cortex. We are calling it as sensory cortex because yes, that's the region which is like receiving all the sensations and processing all the sensations. Okay, this is the area where you feel the sensations. That's why we are calling it as somatosensory cortex. It doesn't mean it is not involved in motor sensations. No, it involves in motor information. It involves in motor control of the body. That too, majority of the upper motor neurons, 40% of the upper motor neurons will come from the somatosensory cortex. Okay, remember this point. We'll discuss in detail about this in the motor nervous system. Having said that, now let's discuss about the sensory homunculus. Okay, sensory homunculus. What is this sensory homunculus, sir? It is a representation or representing the mapping of the brain areas. See, represents mapping of the brain areas dedicated to sensory processing for different anatomical divisions of the body. Sir, what exactly this statement means? If you see, it represents a mapping of the brain areas. See, I am mapping the brain areas. So this is one area, second area, third area, fourth area, fifth area and sixth area. I am mapping them based on what? Dedicated to sensory processing, which means, sir, this part of the cortex is receiving the sensations from the genitalia. This part of the cortex is receiving the sensations from the lower limb. Okay, now this part of the cortex is receiving the sensations from the upper limb, this part from the thumb, this part from the face, this part from the mouth, something like that, this part from the lips, something like that. So we are mapping the brain areas, okay, for sensory processing. This is called as sensory homunculus. Now if you look at here, see, there is a very large area for receiving the sensations from the upper limb. There is a very large area which is taking the information from the upper limb, that too from the thumb. There is a very large area which is receiving the sensations from the face, that too in the face, it's for the lips. So what I am trying to put into your mind is, see, it's the upside representation of the body. Okay, upside representation of the body. See, face and the topmost parts of the body is coming to the down, and the lowermost parts are present on the topmost region. Okay, in the topmost region you are having the lowermost parts of the body, which means, so the lowermost parts of the body. Okay, so the sensations which are coming from the lowermost parts of the body, they are processed in the uppermost part of the cortex. Okay, in the medialmost part of the cortex. And the sensations which are coming from the uppermost part of the body, they will be processed in the lateralmost part of the cortex, in the most lateral regions. Okay, so it's the upside down representation of the body. Maximum representation is there for face as well as the hand, face and hands. Even in the face, maximum representation is there for the lips. Okay, so the sensations which are going through the lips is processed by a very big area, big chunk of area. And the sensations which are going from the thumb is going to be processed in a very big area. So maximum representation of the sensory homunculus is for the face. Even in face it is for the lips, even in the hand it's for the thumb. And the least representation, okay, is coming from the trunk and hips. That's why the sensations, even if someone comes to you and touches you on your back, you can't actually feel it. Okay, most of the time if someone is touching you very lightly, you won't even feel that sensation. Why? Because the sensory area which is allocated, okay, the sensory area which is allocated for the processing of the sensations from your hips and trunks is very, very small. So the least representation is, or the least mapping is given for trunks and hips. Or in other way I can say, so the sensations which are going from the hips and trunks, all the sensations are processed in a very small area of the cortex. Okay, so if you make a human out of it, okay, see, this is how the human will come. See, there is maximum representation for the face. Even in face, the maximum representation is for the lips, and maximum representation is for the hands. Even in hands, it will be there. It will be big for the fingers. Even in fingers, it will be big for the thumb. Okay, so this is sensory homunculus. Exactly sensory sensory homunculus. There is also motor homunculus. Exact opposite thing. Okay. So after discussing about the sensory homunculus, now let's discuss some important laws in the sensory physiology. Some important laws in the sensory physiology, and one such law is the law of projection. Law of projection. Sir, what exactly is this law of projection? What it explains us? First of all, let's see the law. If we stimulate sensory pathway along its course, we know the sensory pathway starting from the receptor, okay, starting from the receptor, first order neuron, second order neuron, third order neuron, from there to the sensory somatosensory cortex. So if you stimulate sensory pathway along its course to the sensory cortex, if you stimulate anywhere, the conscious sensations which are produced is perceived from the location of the receptors. This principle is called as law of projection. Seems more complicated, right? It seems more difficult, right? Okay, bit difficult. Now I will explain you what exactly is this law of projection. See here is the somatosensory cortex. Imagine this is the somatosensory cortex. Here are the lower limbs. Imagine this is the lower limb. Okay, now from your lower limbs, here is the receptor. Okay, here is the receptor for touch. Now from here, the information should have to go into the spinal cord. Now in the spinal cord, the first order neurons are going to be terminated. Okay, first order neurons are going to be terminated. From the spinal cord, the second order neurons are going to start. They will cross to the contralateral side and they will ascend up as a ascending tracts. Okay, as a ascending tract. So the second order neurons, where they will terminate, the second order neurons are going to terminate in the ventroposterolateral nucleus of the thalamus, which is a relay station. Now from the ventroposterolateral nucleus of the thalamus, the third order neurons are going to start. Now these third order neurons, what they will do? They will go to the somatosensory cortex in the form of corona radiata. Okay, the third order neurons, they will go to the somatosensory cortex, and these fibers, the third order neurons, are called as a corona radiata. Okay. Now my point is, see, for example, when you stimulate anywhere in this pathway, this is the pathway, first order neuron, okay, first order neuron, second order neuron and third order neuron. Okay, here is the third order neuron, and the topmost thing is the somatosensory cortex. Now anywhere in this pathway, if you stimulate, for example, I am just taking an electrode, okay, I am taking an electrode and I am stimulating here, okay, this part, or I am stimulating the second order neuron in the spinal cord. Now the patient is going to feel the sensations or not? Yes, the patient is going to feel the sensations. From where? Is he going to feel the sensations in the spinal cord? No, he will feel that he is receiving the sensations from the receptor level. That means he is feeling something is touching his lower limb, something is touching his feet. So this is called as a law of projection. Anywhere in this pathway, if you stimulate anywhere, you will feel that the patient is going to feel that the information is coming from the receptor level. I try to understand it in a different way. Okay, try to understand it in a different way. Now I am taking an electrode. Okay, I am just cutting open the cranium. I am just cutting the cranium open. Now with this electrode, I am stimulating the cortex. Now what will happen? If I stimulate here, okay, this is the area. See, sir, this is the area which is receiving the information. This is the part of somatosensory cortex which is receiving the sensations, or which is processing the sensations from the feet. Now if I stimulate here, now is he going to feel some sensations here in the cortex? No, he is not feeling the sensations in the cortex. He is feeling like someone is touching his feet. So anywhere in this pathway, if you stimulate, he will feel that the sensations are coming down from the receptor level. This is called as a law of projection. Okay, law of projection. Or try to understand something like this. Okay, now how this law of projection is going to helpful for us, how this law of projection is going to helpful for us in the clinical practice. See, for example, now this patient, imagine that, bad luck, he had a road traffic accident. Now in this road traffic accident, his lower limbs are crushed away. Okay, so what we have to do, we have to amputate the lower limbs. Now the lower limb is amputated. Okay, now we have taken out his lower limb like this. Okay, so he is not having his lower limb. Okay, but still he is having his own spinal cord. He is having his thalamus, somatosensory cortex is there. So even if he loses his lower limb, still the second order neurons, third order neurons and cortex is still preserved, it's there. Like it's still there. Now, see, because of some reasons, because of some irritation, if this second order neuron is stimulated because of some irritation, still these nerve fibers are there, right? If they are stimulated, means what he is going to feel? He will complain to you, doctor, I am feeling sensations from my thumb. Okay, I am feeling my sensations from my foot. He is not having his foot. Okay, he is not having his big toe. Big toe is not there. But he will say that someone is touching my big toe. Now, you will think that, this patient might be having some psychiatric issue. No, actually he is feeling that. Because, okay, of course we know there is no lower limb. He lost his, thigh, legs and foot is lost. but still he is feeling because see whenever you stimulate here, the second order neuron is activated, it will stimulate the third order neuron, it will stimulate that somatosensory cortex which is processing the information from the lower limb or from the foot. Okay, so see if we stimulate the sensory cortex area which receives the impulses from the left hand, patient reports sensations in the left hand, not in the head. See what you are doing, you are stimulating the sensory cortex area which is receiving the impulses from the left hand. See this, from this left hand information will go where? Sir, from the left hand information is going to the somatosensory cortex. Now if you stimulate that somatosensory cortex, the patient is going to say that, sir, someone is touching my left hand. He is not going to say someone is touching his head. He is going to say that someone is touching his left hand. Okay, so this is law of projection, and how is going to be helpful for us? See, it explains a phenomena called as phantom limb. What is phantom limb phenomena? Phantom limb means a patient with an amputated limb may complain pain or other sensation in a limb which is absent. In the limb which is absent. See, the limb is not there, but he is still feeling the sensation from that limb, and this phenomena is explained by law of projection. What is law of projection? Anywhere in this pathway, if you stimulate, the patient is going to feel the sensations from the receptor level. Okay, where the receptors are present now? The receptors are present in the foot. So he is going to feel the sensations, that these sensations are coming from the foot. Okay, so this is the law of projection which explains the phantom limb phenomena. Now after this, let's talk about the Weber-Schwestner law. Sir, what is this Weber-Schwestner's law? Weber-Schwestner's law says that the magnitude of the sensation swells are directly proportional to the log intensity of the stimulus. Okay, see the magnitude, how powerfully you are feeling. For example, now if someone coming and pinches like this, okay, I will feel some sensations, okay, little sensations. Now, for example, if you come and pinch me more hardly, okay, now I am going to feel more sensations. So the magnitude of the sensations which I feel depends on what? Depends on the intensity of the stimulus. Now, if you increase the intensity of the stimulus, I will feel more sensation. If you decrease the intensity of stimulus, automatically the sensations which I feel are also going to be decreased. So the magnitude of the sensations field are directly proportional to the log intensity of the stimulus. This is Weber-Schwestner law. Okay. Okay guys, we have discussed about the important laws. Now in the next video, let's discuss about the special sensations. Okay, under special sensations, first we will discuss about the eye. After that, we will discuss about the ear. That's the hearing, and the semicircular canals which are helping in the balance. Hope the video is helpful. Thank you.